Hey folks, this is Rhykker with a gaming news wrap-up video where we discuss the happenings of the week. This week's topics include the huge outrage in the World of Warcraft community, some great news for Path of Exile players, an update on the new Diablo lore book coming out this year, and more. As always, you can find discussion timestamps in the video description. And as we're about to dive in here, I just want to take a quick moment to let you know that if you want to get your name on the Rikers Raiders 2018 t-shirt or poster, you have until the end of August. Link in the description below on how to do that. Alright, kicking off with some Overwatch news, literally kicking off, because it's about the Summer Games and thus Lucio Ball. Well, I guess it's not really kicking, but you get the idea. This year's Summer Games begin August 9th, and from the preview it seems that it will once again be a return of Lucio Ball, and some players are starting to feel, hey, third year in a row, same thing. It's seeming like all of our recurring events are gonna return mostly unchanged. What's the deal, Blizzard? I think it's time for something new, and I turn the question to you folks. Do you think that we need something new, or is it fine to just bring back the same events from previous years, maybe with some minor changes as Blizzard has done? Or do you really want something completely fresh and new? Personally, when it's an event that, only comes around once a year, I'm fine with it being that same event. I do look forward to playing Lucio Ball. But I could also see the argument for, well, maybe in addition to Lucio Ball, also having another new summer game. What do you think? On to some Cyberpunk 2077 news. We got some more information on the game courtesy of Quest designer Patrick Mills, as reported by PC Gamer in an interview for Official Xbox magazine. This is like Sourceception. So when asked whether Cyberpunk 2077 will contain, quote, political themes or social commentary, Patrick Mills replied, Cyberpunk 2077 is a game about people with power at the top and people at the bottom with none. That power can come from money, hierarchies, technology, and violence. The original Cyberpunk 2020 setting, like the setting of The Witcher stories, was a complex critique of the author's world, and we don't shy away from that in our games. On the contrary, I think it's one of the things that sets us apart. Cyberpunk is an inherently political genre, and it's an inherently political franchise. Now, I'm generally fine with games tackling bigger, tough topics, as long as things don't get preachy. I think it's great when a work of fiction, be it a movie or a video game, can tackle an important theme, just as long as we're not hit over the head with a message, like in Star Wars, the last stupid movie, whatever it was called, where the damn casino planet scene where, war bad, war bad. Now that said, I do have faith in CD Projekt Red to execute this well. Now, Mills also discussed about the decision to make the game first person. Quote, there's a lot of things we get from first person, and part of it is being closer to the character and to feel like you're inhabiting that character. But at the same time, I would also say this. Go play a third person game. Go play The Witcher 3 and look up. Just try to look straight up. You'll find the immersion never truly works. It never feels like you are looking up. It feels like you're moving a camera around. And what are your thoughts on this? Would you rather the Cyberpunk game be third person or first person? I definitely agree that first person feels more immersive, and I think if you're going for a silent protagonist in particular, that's a good way to go. We're talking about our Skyrims, our Fallouts, for instance. But I think when it comes to telling a good story with a good character, a well-written main character, like old Jerry here, I feel that third person definitely helps to see the facial expressions, see the emotion. I think it's two very different types of storytelling, and I'm not sure which I prefer. I suppose in an open world game where you effectively make your own story, I like having the blank slate, silent protagonist, full-on immersion first person view. But if I'm following a nice narrative, I want a developed character with a voice. I feel that's important to me, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. On to Path of Exile news. It's good news all around. First off, map hackers are getting banned. Grinding Gear Games gave the warning, and now they're cracking down. And then they also added two really cool cosmetic microtransactions, I suppose you can say, to the game. Now, I've been on record, I've said this on stream, in Path of Exile, I don't care what my character looks like. I am not at all enticed by any of the cosmetic transmogs. I feel differently in Diablo 3. In Diablo 3, I do enjoy transmogging my character, but in Path of Exile, for whatever reason, the visuals just didn't appeal to me enough to really care what my character looked like. However, that was before I really paid attention to the cosmetic transmogs that alter not your character's appearance, but your abilities' appearance. And so we've got two new ones here. One for Summon Raging Spirits, that instead of summoning the little floating skull, is now Summon Raging Bees, where you're summoning swarms of bees to attack your enemy. So I think that's really cool. And then we also have the Pylon of Pain totem skin, which can replace any spell or ranged attack totem. And this is just absolutely gnarly. This is like Diablo style dark. I think Path of Exile has sort of continued the Diablo 2 style dark grittiness, and I love this as well. So again, I've never before been enticed by Path of Exile transmogs that your character equips, but I think things that alter what abilities look like, and I know that these aren't the first, but it's the first time I really paid attention. I think that is really cool. I think that's really interesting. And it overall has more visual panache because, you know, in combat, in the thick of things, are you really paying attention to what your character looks like, or are you paying more attention to all the various spell effects going on? Then lastly, for Path of Exile, we have a really interesting topic that was raised by Redditor Grabel, where he's discussing the clear speed meta. Basically, the most effective way of playing Path of Exile in the end game is all revolving around clear speed, how quickly you can clear maps, because the faster you go through those maps, then the more drops per hour you're getting. So all the best endgame builds in Path of Exile revolve around being able to kill things as fast as possible, run through the map, killing things as fast as possible. Clear speed is the single most important thing. So he's asking players basically, do you like that this is the case? You can come up with some really interesting builds, some really strong builds, but if they can't clear fast, then they're not good enough to be considered endgame viable. Now in Diablo 3, things are sort of like this as well, and I feel to an extent this is just a reflection of the action RPG genre. It's always going to come down to how many drops per hour you can get. And so Diablo 3 has a very, very strict speed meta. However, I feel maybe in Diablo 3 you see this more in Path of Exile, where you also have the pushing meta, the pushing builds, which are not going to revolve around how fast you can clear things. These are the ones for when you're clearing the highest Greater Rift you possibly can. I think that tends to be a bigger part of the game than in Path of Exile. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't have extensive experience in Path of Exile's endgame. I know that killing the big bosses, your shapers and whatnot, is a part of Path of Exile, but it's not as prevalent, it's not as mandatory to do as clearing higher Greater Rifts in Diablo 3. It's not as rewarding. In Diablo 3, you get rewarded for pushing a higher Greater Rift than you've ever pushed before. You get rewarded for doing higher Greater Rifts, period. Yes, in general, the most effective thing to do is speedruns, but there definitely is a benefit and a segment of time that you want to devote to pushing the highest content you can that isn't just being fast. Now, personally, I really enjoy speed builds, so I don't really have a problem with the speed meta, but I turn the question to you folks. Do you wish that Path of Exile had something more rewarding for builds that would be slower but either tankier or can do more damage? Should there be something in the game that rewarded a different type of playstyle in addition to your speed builds? Alright, on to World of Warcraft news, and moving into the huge controversy of the week, the Sylvanas Warbringer's animated short. Now, I need to preface this by saying I am not a World of Warcraft player. I played Warcraft 2 back in the day, I played Warcraft 3, Frozen Throne back in the day, I played a little bit of World of Warcraft, and I've tried to keep up with the lore a little bit, but a lot of my Warcraft lore knowledge is from the olden days. So I'll mention that I was there. I was there when Arthas became the Lich King. I was there when Sylvanas became the Banshee Queen. So for me, upon watching this animated short, I thought it was cool that we saw callbacks to lore that I was more familiar with, characters that I knew and could relate to. I found that the artists did an excellent job at conveying emotion in the facial expressions, and also thought it was really cool to see, I guess, the lore behind those streaks under her eyes, that it started off as tears that got burnt into her cheeks. I thought that was really neat. That said, I feel it failed to live up to the Jaina animated short. I think the Jaina short was just 10 out of 10, and knocked it out of the park. And a big part of that, as I said last week, was because of the song. I guess it was too much to hope for another song for Sylvanas. I guess Sylvanas isn't really the singing type, but overall I certainly didn't come away from the animated short thinking it sucked or being upset. But again, I'm not a WoW player, so I was very, I guess, surprised to see the huge outrage by a segment of the WoW community. I understand not all World of Warcraft players were upset by this, but a lot of people were very upset by this, and I think a large part of it was Horde players. So I started to research, I started to look into it, try to figure out why are people so mad. And it seems that a big part of it was that there was a long period of build-up to this moment. Now basically the main event that occurs within the animated short is Sylvanas burns Teldrassil, the Night Elf world tree, the Night Elf home. So it's been known for a while that Teldrassil was burned to the ground. But apparently Blizzard had alluded for a long time that there would be a more interesting answer to the question, who burned Teldrassil and why, than Sylvanas, because villainy. For months, fan theories had been building up that, oh, maybe the Alliance decided to burn Teldrassil, maybe it was Anduin who did it, you know, so-and-so, so many complex theories were emerging from fans, sort of like the fan theories that were coming out before The Last Jedi, which ultimately left all those theory crafters disappointed, because you just got some really unsatisfying answers or no answers. So a lot of Blizzard fans felt that it was really bad writing that, oh, well, Sylvanas just burned the world tree because she mad, bro. Because quite literally what happens is that Sylvanas had not planned to destroy Teldrassil. She was going to capture it, because it is a strategic, intelligent decision to do so, but then some random night elf kind of pissed her off, and she decided to burn down the tree. It's maybe a simplification. She saw it as their symbol of hope, so I'm gonna burn down all your hope. Blizzard had also hinted that there would be some shades of gray stuff going on, when this is clearly a black and white issue. There is no room for moral gray here. Sylvanas committed an act of absolute evil, burning civilians. There's no moral gray anywhere here to her character at all. And to be fair, Sylvanas has always been evil as long as she's been the Banshee Queen. She's never been a morally gray character, so there's nothing really wrong with that. But a lot of the rage from the community stemmed mostly from Horde players or Horde sympathizers who saw that the Horde is not evil. The Horde is morally gray, you can say. The Horde aren't the true evil villains of the story, and Blizzard has worked hard at making things that way since Warcraft 3. In Warcraft 1 and Warcraft 2, the orcs were evil. In Warcraft 3, they retconned that to, no, orcs aren't inherently evil, they were possessed by demons. And that's what started this whole thing of, no, the Horde is not evil. So there is honor amongst orcs. So while the community could accept, yes, Sylvanas burned the tree, maybe it wasn't the most strategic decision to do, mostly because as long as they held that tree, as long as they held Teldrassil and all these civilians therein, they had leverage over the Alliance. But if they were to burn that down, then that would just force the Alliance to come at them with everything they had. So even if we ignore the apparent tactical error that Sylvanas committed, how could the rest of the Horde just sit idly by and watch all of these civilians be slaughtered? This is evil. How could no one in the Horde object? I mean, it was within the last, 5 years that there was a revolution against Garrosh because he was too evil of a war chief of the Horde. And now Sylvanas is being 10 times worse, and no one's batting an eye. Now, some people tried to come up with these elaborate 4D chess maneuvers, this complex plan that Sylvanas had, that she really had a smart, intelligent reason for burning down the tree. It was all premeditated. She sent off her druids elsewhere because she knew they would object to it. But all of this falls apart when you follow the very basic description of this animated short on Twitter, from the official World of Warcraft Twitter, that says, Sylvanas Windrunner leads the Horde to victory, but a chance encounter, not premeditated, random event, this is like a random encounter in D&D. A chance encounter causes her to make a decision that will forever change the course of history on Azeroth. Not premeditated, no 4D chess. The druids being elsewhere was just a happy coincidence. She literally decided to burn Teldrassil on the spot because that night elf made her mad. So it's kind of looking like things are being set up for Sylvanas to be a villain here. Maybe even a raid boss or something. But again, while all of her actions can be explained away by Sylvanas is evil. She's always been evil. The problem is, how could Saurfang not object to this? How could any number of honorable members of the Horde just stand by? Saurfang has explicitly said he would never hurt innocents, even if they were the enemy. And apparently in the novelization, Saurfang does object. Now, people were so upset over this that they were actually harassing Blizzard employees, specifically writers. For instance, senior writer at Blizzard, Christy Golden, was even told to kill herself. But despite Teldrassil burning, there still was some hope. On Twitter, the Dreadmist man said, quote, "I maintain that despite everything, that all the setup, that all the promises that the Warcraft developers have made in the last year, that everything is leading somewhere, that there is a story here that is worth telling, that is worth being on the ride for. And if not, if all of this, if all the promises at BlizzCon and interviews and on turn out to be like the floating ash that now washed up on the shores of Darkshore, well then I suppose I'll be saddened I survived long enough to see it burn." And then the man, Green Jesus Chris Metzen himself, replied to that tweet, /this, "My counsel is that everyone take a deep breath and enjoy the ride. I will. You haven't seen the whole form of the wave yet. As Douglas Adams would tell you, don't panic." Now, if you happen to not know who Chris Metzen is, apart from being the voice of Thrall, he was with Blizzard forever, basically. He was the senior vice president of story and franchise development. He had a huge hand in basically every Blizzard story ever told. And he stepped down in 2016 to spend more time with family. But if Chris Metzen's gonna tell me to stay calm, I'ma stay calm. And it seems almost as though Chris Metzen knew something was coming, because later this same week, a full-blown CGI cinematic released. Titled Old Soldier, it was all about Saurfang, and showing his internal conflict, and showing that he did not approve of what happened with the burning of Teldrassil, and showing him losing faith in the Horde. It was that little bit of extra context that everyone needed to be okay, to see that no, the Horde was not on board, or at least some members of the Horde were not on board with this pure act of evil. And one really cool thing about this cinematic is that it takes place in the moments before the Battle for Azeroth opening cinematic. I encourage you to watch the two back to back, because they fit together like two puzzle pieces. And the other incredible thing was just seeing how the community just did a complete about face, a full-on 180, going from hating Blizzard to loving Blizzard again. Because today, redemption is spelled S-A-U-R. Alright, on to our Diablo news. On NA and EU servers, there has been a bot or ban wave. It doesn't seem to have hit the Asian servers yet as of the time of this recording, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it come there as well. A few of the top clears on both season and non-season, which is kinda rare, have been taken down, and pro Diablo player SVR estimates that at least 1 to 2 dozen top leaderboard clears have been removed. In other Diablo news, we recently discussed the Diablo Bestiary, the Book of Adria, that appeared on Amazon. Now, previously, the listed author was Entertainment Blizzard, and I questioned that. I found that odd. Well, this week, if you go visit, the author has been updated to Brooks and Burns. Now, I'm pretty sure that this Burns and Brooks correspond to two Blizzard employees. We have Matt Burns, who is a senior writer and story developer at Blizzard. He's been with Blizzard for over 10 years and has written for, it seems, most of Blizzard's major franchises. His job entails working on short fiction, comics, novels, visual media, web assets, and in-game content like unit lines, and he is credited as the writer of the Book of Tyrael. That's really the smoking gun here. He was also listed as a contributing writer to the Book of Cain. Then we have Robert Brooks, who is a senior writer in Blizzard's creative department, which is a part of the company's story and franchise development team. He's written for all 6 of Blizzard's franchises and has been at the company for 6 years. So any concern that I had about this Amazon listing being illegitimate has effectively evaporated now, and I look forward to some kind of official press release from Blizzard about the Book of Adria, or I suppose just waiting for it to actually release. And also in Diablo news, we have something by author David Craddock. Basically, it's a book that he launched on Kickstarter, while the second part in a series of books called Stay a While and Listen. He successfully finished his Kickstarter this week, and he did an Ask Me Anything on Reddit. In his words, this second book covers the making of Diablo 2 and StarCraft, the culture and personalities of Blizzard North and regular Blizzard South, development of cancelled projects such as the Diablo 3 MMORPG, and Blizzard North's Project X, and takes you behind closed doors to witness what happened in the summer of 2003 when Blizzard North co-founders David Brevik and Max and Eric Schaefer were dismissed from their company, along with approximately 2/3 of their staff. If you folks are not familiar with the story of what happened back then I encourage you to check out this book, because there is a lot of, well, there's some drama, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that happened. A lot of people point out, how could Diablo 4 be coming anytime soon? It took 12 years to make Diablo 3. It took 12 years to make Diablo 3 because of all the politics that were happening behind the scenes. Blizzard North was the company that made Diablo 1 and Diablo 2, which was a separate entity entirely from Blizzard. During development of Diablo 3, which at some point early in development was going to be an MMORPG, most of Blizzard North left, and ultimately Blizzard North was shut down and development on D3 was completely restarted years after development had begun. Now, specifically on the topic about the MMO side of Diablo 3, according to Craddock, there was some concern that World of Warcraft and a Diablo 3 MMO might cannibalize each other, but it seems that they felt that D3 would have gameplay distinct enough from World of Warcraft for each game to be able to carve out its own niche. So, for everyone bringing up, can Diablo 4 be an MMO? I suppose the answer to that is yes, provided that, again, it does not intrude on the territory of World of Warcraft, keeping that gameplay dissimilar enough. And I suppose if they thought it was possible then, they probably think it could still be possible. As for our weekly update on Diablo job postings, no update this week. All the job postings that have been up now for a few weeks are still up. And that's going to wrap up this video. Be sure to check out last week's video where we discuss some signs that Diablo 4 might not be as far away as we think. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch and Patreon supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider becoming a Royal Raider on Patreon, where we've got a number of backer rewards, including getting your name on our t-shirt and poster, behind-the-scenes content, Q&A, monthly hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Rhykkers Raiders for more gaming content.